Okay, hello everyone and welcome back. So in this video, this is part 2 of the Space Invaders series, where I'm going to be building Space Invaders using Pygame in Python. So in the last video I mainly just went over my setup rather than talking about the project. So in this video I'm going to be showing you guys what I got up to, and I'll just show you what I finished so far. So before in the last video I was showing you guys that I was stuck on trying to make the bullets actually move across the screen and move across in the right distance and checking if they've gone off the screen and those things. So I finally managed to do that, and this is the bullet mechanism in action. So as you can see, you can fire the bullet. I'm probably going to change how the bullet looks like. So you can fire the bullet and it detects when it's gone off the screen, and then it automatically removes itself from the screen. And the player can only fire one bullet at a time to make the game a bit more fun, because if you can just keep on hitting the bullets consistently, it's not going to be as fun since you can just keep on hitting the spacebar. So to start off with, I'm going to go over the main file. So here I'm just starting off by importing Pygame, and then from pygame.locals importing everything. So this pygames.locals is, I believe, it's just a bunch of constants which you can use. So if you go down here, you've got here a constant here called quit, which is an event that we're checking for. So Pygame, so technically this should actually be pygame.quit, but so quit is checking if we actually click this cross key here so we can actually get off the game window. Usually that's going to be pygame.quit, but we can reference it directly because we've imported this pygame.locals thing, library, something like that. So this is part of the Pygame module. I didn't know you could actually import it before, but I started importing it. Makes the code look little bit more readable. I also imported sys, and then the reason I imported sys was because I needed to use this method in sys called sys.exit function, which essentially just closes the program whenever we press the X key. I've also imported OS, which I realized I don't actually need. Yeah, that was mainly for my if I go ahead to my main class, I needed to use, I believe I used, oh no, I didn't use it by the looks of it. So originally when I was importing all of these different sprites and different character images, I was going to use OS method in the OS module inside of Python called os.path.join. But for some reason it wasn't really working here. It worked in Sublime Text but not in VS Code. So I just defined the path I just defined this variable here called path, and then I just concatenated it with the actual path, where the actual path of where the asset is. So I'm just going to delete this as well since I don't actually need it. I'll go into my Space Invaders folder. So from this file here called main, it's going to import everything inside of it, which includes this main class, which has it's just like a general things I'm going to be using in the game. For example, all the sprites, different colors are going to be using. The player controls. These ones, the player controls, and these ones I'm probably going to move over to the ship file with the ship, which is going to be a class called ship, and then I'm just going to add the player controls there because I just kept it here for now just to make sure everything was actually working properly and as I expected it to work. And so far it is working properly, so I'm probably just going to get all the stuff and move it to the ship class, where I'm going to have the player ship and then the enemy ship as well. Finally, I also imported everything from the lasers file, which has a class called lasers. Yeah. So the lasers actually ended up being the idea of it, well, the theory behind it was not that complicated, but the part I got stuck on was the fact that there's so many different ways of approaching it. If you go online and try to look up some sort of tutorial for Pygame bullets, some people use sprite groups or whatever else. Some people just append new instances of the laser class into a list and then pop them whenever they go off the screen, stuff like that. The approach I did was that I made one bullet and it had two states. So technically, I have this variable here called laser state. So if the laser state is going to be true, then I'm going to fire the bullet. If it's going to be false, then the instance of the bullet is still going to be there, but it won't be colliding with everything. It won't actually be on the screen. So I'm going to be using one bullet and then just making it appear on the screen and disappear whenever the player fires it. So if I go back to the Space Invaders one, which is like the main file, I'm just gonna go step by step, which every single part, then go into the lasers part later, because the lasers come around here. So here I'm doing main, so I'm making an instance of the main class. If you're wondering why I did not make an instance of the laser class here, it's because I made an instance of that when I actually pressed the so the thing is, it's gonna be two lasers. So it's gonna be the enemy's lasers, and then it's gonna be the player laser. If I made the instance of I made the instance of a player laser when the player presses the spacebar. So right now, as I'm playing the game, the lasers classes instance does not exist. When I press spacebar, now it exists, and even though it's off the screen, it's still existing. I just made it disappear and then put its new position to be this laser X position right here. So that's the default position whenever you hit it again. So if I press spacebar again, it goes up. It's still existing. You just can't see it. It's not on the screen, but it's still there in the code. So some people might have made like a list, and then in that list they'll append the new instances of the laser. So they'll make a laser instance. They'll append that to the list whenever the player presses the spacebar, and then they would, whenever that instance of that bullet will go off the screen or collide with some other entity inside of the screen, then they would just remove that. They'll remove the instance of that bullet by using the remove method or pop, and depending on the instance, they can enumerate the list and then find the index of it. Then after that, I initialize all of Pygame's modules. So pygame.init, is what it is, the way it sounds. So be able to use different the different functions and different kinds of things which Pygame supplies, which is a lot. You actually have to initialize everything inside of it. So you can use that doing pygame.init, or you can, if you don't want to do this, Pygame.init initializes all the modules inside all the different functions and methods inside of the Pygame module. You can do something like pygame.display.init, or like you can initialize the specific specific functions that you're going to be using. So here I'm setting the display. So sorry, the title for the display to Space Invaders. So if you see here, by default, it should say something like Pygame game. I'm not actually sure. Let me just quickly comment out this line. It says Pygame window. So you can just set a title. This is something. It's not necessary, but it makes it easier because you'll be able to tell. It's a nice touch there. You can also change this icon right here from like a snake to a Space Invaders logo or something. I'm probably going to do that afterwards, but I just decided to use Space Invaders for now. I also made an instance called clock, which is going to be from the pygame.time.clock module. So in the Pygame module, you got this function called clock. You can make an instance of it, and this gives me access to different functions. Like at the end of the file, I did clock.tick60, which means that I'm setting the screen's refresh rate to be at a maximum. So if you put it this way, so the minimum is going to be 0, and the maximum is going to be 60 FPS. So the player can go below 60 FPS, but he can't go beyond 60 FPS. So if I do something like here, such as print, I think it was pygame.time.get FPS. I think maybe I got an error. Pygame.time does not. It might be clock.get FPS. I'm not sure. Oops, not get, clock. Okay. Yes, there we go. So as you can see here, my FPS goes. It got a tiny bit above 60 FPS there, but as you can see, it's staying around 60 FPS. Is not going above it. Well, sometimes it goes above it, but you're getting the general idea. It doesn't go too much it doesn't go too much beyond 60 FPS. It can go lower, depending upon the specifications of your computer. If you've got a low-end machine, most likely, depending if you got a somewhat recent, if you got a decent computer, then chances are, if you're running something like Pygame, which has very simple graphics, especially this game, is just a bunch of pixel graphics, it should be running at 60 FPS. You can put it lower if you want, like 30 FPS. That makes the game a little bit slower. So the faster you make the FPS, the faster the game goes. So 60 I found is pretty good. You can do like 120 FPS, but if you ask me, the game just goes super fast there. So I kept it to 60 to make things, to make it a bit easier to play since it works pretty well there. So I'll just get rid of this. I also made a variable here called laser state. Now, if you may be wondering, well, I got two laser state variables. So if I go to my lasers file here, I got one here called laser state, and I've also got a laser state here. So you might be wondering what's going on here, but I'll explain that in a minute. There's probably a better. So this is the way I made the bullets. Actually, so I made it so the player couldn't keep on hitting the spacebar to make to make the bullets keep on going up and up again, because it just makes the game too easy. So this is how I made it, so that you can only launch a bullet once the bullet which is already on the screen gets off the screen, or I'm going to add functionality for it whenever I would check for collisions between different entities. So as you can see, I can keep pressing the spacebar here, but it won't let me shoot another bullet until the bullet which is already moving across the screen, it goes off the screen somehow. So it may be that it collided with an entity, but right now the only way you can actually get the bullet off the screen, or get the program to recognize this off the screen, is by making the bullets a y coordinate go less than 0. So that was how. I'm going to explain a bit more about this later once I get down to around this area here. So I made a main game loop. So if you don't know how games actually work, is kind of like back in the 1980s, you've probably seen the old animated movies. So what they do is that they'll make a drawing, and then they'll change that drawing a bit, and then they'll keep on making these very similar looking drawings, but once they play it fast enough right next to each other, it's going to give you appearance of an animation. Well, games are kind of like that in that sense, because what we're doing is that instead of drawing a picture, we're going to be drawing a certain thing onto the screen, for example a pixel, and then what I can do is I can keep on refreshing the screen at a certain rate. So if you go down here, you can see that I've done, I set the FPS to 60. So FPS stands for the frames per second. So that's how many times my screen's going to be painting a new picture, if you will. So my screen right now is going to be painting a new picture onto the screen every 60 times per second. So if I put it to 120 times per second, it will be doing it faster. So it'll be making a new picture on the screen 120 times per second. If it was 30, if my FPS was 30, then it will be making the picture on the screen 30 times per second. So the faster the higher the FPS is, usually what's going to happen is that the game's going to look a bit more fluid. It's going to look nicer. But usually to do that you have to, but there's a bit of caveats in there, because depending on the speed of your PC, it can make the game go faster as well. Like in my case, if you can adjust that by using real time and calculating your time, because the CPU, the higher FPS is, the faster all the things which are supposed to be happening in the background are happening. So it's going to make the illusion that the game is going faster and it's happening faster. So people usually use things like comparing it from real time and then your machine time, because the CPU is going to take less time to do all those calculations in the background. So without getting too much into that, because I was planning to use some kind of way to measure it. For example, I was going to make it so that you can only fire a bullet after 500 milliseconds. You can do that by using this. It's going to be here. So it's called Pygame.time. I think it was get ticks. So if I made a variable here called get, so if I just do something here, like for example, I want to make a variable called, I'm just going to print out pygame.time.get ticks. Okay, let's print this out. And we've got a error. I think it's going to be this. Okay, here we go. So if you look at it here, this is the amount of time. So whenever I wrote on this thing, this line here, where I'm saying print pygame.time.getTicks, it's essentially going to be calculating how much time is taken. So if I print out a variable here called time, and I define this variable here time right before my my while loop. So I'll do time is equal to pygame time I think it was get ticks. Okay, let's run this now. what this is doing is that it's calculating the amount of time it's taken from when it was made to when I'm actually I made this variable called time right here, which is calculating the amount of time which has taken for it to be run. So it's going to be calculating. So if I put my this variable here, for example, it's kind of hard to explain it here because you can't really understand it unless you use it practically. So as you can see here, it's just checking the amount of time that it's taken from when it's been cooled. So if I put this up, if I want to put it before the while loop, it was taking less time. Now it's taking more time. It's calculating the amount of time that it's actually been calculating. So I don't really know how to explain it, but I think the better way would be just to look at the official documentation. So if I open up a browser here, we can do so pygame dot time dot get ticks. Okay, so if you go here, we go to this pygame dot time. This is part of the Pygame module, which allows you to monitor time. As you can see, you can create an object to help track time, stuff like that. That's the one I did before. So if I go here, we can like delay the game for around 10 seconds if you want to show an end screen or something. But I want to quickly find where it says get ticks. It should be here. Okay, here we go. So pygame.time.get ticks returns the number of milliseconds since pygame.init was called. Before this, okay. So I kind of got confused there a bit. So this is calculating. So the reason it took less time here is because it's checking the amount of time it's so when the code is running, it takes a certain amount of time to run. The faster your computer, the faster the code will run. So it's calculating the amount of time since it was called, since the pygame.init method was called here, and then whenever so here is going to be remaining the same because it's going to remain the same because I'm not looping over. It's going to be the same value every single time because it's always going to be 1, 2, 3. There's going to be 3 lines of code it has to run. It's going to take exact same amount of time to run. However, here in the while loop, the value you can see was changing is because whenever we're pressing the space bar, it has to run some more code. If it's doing something else, it has to run even more code. So that can make it take longer, and also because it's farther away from this pygame.init method. So what you can do is you can use this to calculate the amount of time in real time. So if I wanted to wait for 500 milliseconds, I can do something here like current time is going to be equal to pygame.time.get ticks, and then I can do past. I could do old time is going to be pygame.time.get ticks. I'm doing this outside the for loop because this the while loop, sorry, because this value is going to be less than this value because it's closer to the pygame.init. So now I can say that instead of doing if the laser state is equal to true, I can do something like if current time minus old time is going to be greater than 500 milliseconds, let's just say, because this is being calculated in milliseconds. Then I'm going to run this code. So it's going to wait for 500 milliseconds, but in this example this will not work because I set up differently. But you can do it like this, where you use time and then you can shoot the bullet after 500 milliseconds of when it was first shot. To do that, I tried this here, but it didn't really work out that well, because usually if you want to do it like this, you're probably going to have some sort of list which has you have appended all the instances of the new lasers that you've made, and then you can keep on checking it. It makes it easier. So I didn't do it like that. I did it using different kinds of states. So the bullet has a state where it's shooting, a bullet has a state where it's going to be not shooting, so stuff like that. I'm going to explain that in a minute. So this is my main game loop. So I'm going to be drawing. This is a method inside of my main class called draw background. So if I go here, actually, handy shortcut you can do in VS Code. If you highlight over, so if you put your cursor over the method that you want to check, you can do GD, which means go to definition, and then it will show you where it actually defined it. So here we've got define draw background, and then here it's trying to filling the screen with the color black. So what happens is if I remove this, for example, I'm just gonna comment it out. If I run it now, well, you can't really see anything right now. But the thing is, whenever I'm filling, so the way Pygame works is that, or Pygame in particular, is that if I open up Paint for a second, we're going to have something here called a display surface. If you can think of it like this screen itself, if I, oops, not this, I'll quickly uncomment this line out, and then I will, actually, you know what, let me just, and yeah, let me just quickly run this. Okay, so I'm just got confused, sorry. So here, this actual screen itself, we call this the display surface, and this is kind of like where everything else in the game actually happens. So what you can do is this display surface, we can do a few things to it. So we can fill it up with a color, for example, black. So we're going, every single time we refresh the screen's going to turn black, and then we can add new images to it. So anything that was on the screen before then is going to be removed off the screen. So if I do, let's just say I draw this thing, so which is going to be my player here. This is what we call a surface inside a Pygame. I can have multiple surfaces, so I can draw a surface on top of a surface. So if I do something like this here, then well, if I do it like this, then I can draw surfaces on top of surfaces. So to this background you see here, if I run it again, so this background is actually a surface, and then this ship here is also a surface, then this bullet here is also a surface, and I'm drawing this all on top of the display surface, and you have, depending which order you call it on. So when I was drawing the let me quickly go here. So when I was adding the background onto the screen, that's the first surface I put on the display surface. Whatever I put after it's gonna go on top of that surface, and it's gonna keep on doing like that, because what happens is, so if I drew the bullet first, then you won't be able to see the bullet because it's going to be going behind the background. So let's just say if I got this draw background method, and I put it right here. Well, if I run the game now, you won't be able to see anything. I'm shooting the laser, but you won't be able to see my character or anything, because the main background is going to be on top of all of those things, because it's the one I've drawn onto the screen last. So I have to put this one to be the first one, or else it won't actually do that. So when I run it now, okay, I have to do this. Now you can see the characters because they're being put after they've been drawn after I draw the background. So that's how surfaces work in Pygame. Now I'm checking for events. So events are like, the way you can think about it is like, imagine if you're trying to keep on hitting a wall. You're going to repeatedly hit and keep on checking if the wall's broken. Actually, it's a really good analogy. Well, event is just something that the which Pygame or whatever graphics type of game engine using, they keep on trying to check for if something's happening. So imagine that this, for example, this event here called quit. It keeps on checking if I'm pressing the cross key, and eventually, if I do press the cross key, that event's gonna be triggered, and then that I told it to run this following code. So I'm looping through all the events which Pygame has. You can make your own custom user events, but I won't get into that right now. That's a bit more advanced. So if I do pygame.event.get, and then I go here, pygame.event. So this is, yeah. So if we do something here, we can get all the events inside of the Pygame queue. So these are the queue is basically a bunch of events in order that we can check for, and these are all this pygame.event.get is essentially just going to be a event list. So just going to be a list of events which we can check for. So we're going to looping through this list of events, and then if this if this event is going to be the type of quit, well technically it should be called pygame.quit. But if I can spell it, so it should be called pygame.quit. But if I go up to the file here, since we did this pygame.locals import everything, we can refer to these constants without having to do pygame. So now if I press this cross here which in Windows means that you want to close the application, is going to run these two commands, which is sys.exit and pygame.quit. So sys.exit just exits out the program, and then pygame.quit just uninitializes all of Pygame's modules, so we don't get any extra errors. Another event I'm checking for, so I'm doing, as you can see, I had event.type, and now I'm checking for another event. So quit was an event. Another event is key down. So key down is essentially a map of my entire keyboard, and then it checks if I press down a specific key on my keyboard, and then if I did press that specific key on my keyboard, it will then do something. So if that key which I've pressed is going to be the space key, I'm going to set this laser state variable here. So this laser state, I'm going to set that to true, and then I'm going to make an instance of this, which is going to be the player laser, the lasers class. I'm making an instance of it here, and then I'm setting laser state to be equal to false. Now the reason I set laser state to be equal to false is that if I didn't do that, what you can see is the player can, well, it's not working here, but usually what's going to happen is that the player is going to be able to keep on hitting the space bar and it's going to be able to keep on getting the bullet to it's going to be able to make new instances of bullet. So I'm now drawing the player. So if I just go to here, this player method is actually just calling two other methods I defined. So player controls, which is adding controls, and then I'm drawing the player on the screen. Delete the extra line there. So this player move laser. So what I'm doing, if I actually go general structure this, so the thing is, I'm referring, so whenever we're doing this while loop, it's going to keep on trying to loop over every single time. And the problem with that is going to be that, so whenever I'm looping over this while loop, I'm referring to an instance of the lasers class which I've not actually made yet. So I'm going to get a unbound local error. It means that I'm referring to a variable that does not exist or I've not defined yet. And well, the thing is, I want to put this I want to call this method here, because I want to keep on updating this position of the bullet in the background, so I don't have to keep on focusing on it. So it's just going to be happening in the background in the while loop. So I'm going to try this command to check if there's actually going to be an instance created yet. So right here, right now when it's running it, it's going to technically be shouting out unbound error. I'm telling it, if you get an unbound error, just ignore all of this code. So pass means don't do anything, just ignore the code and move on to the next code, which is to update the screen and set the FPS to 60. So here, if I move the screen here, so as you can see, now I press spacebar, this code will be running. And the reason is because I've made a instance of the player laser, and the player laser is still there. So here we go, as you can see, it's doing that. So I'm moving the player, and then here I've got a laser cooldown. So this is what's happening. If I go to where I defined it, no, not this, the instances methods. Okay, here we go. This laser cooldown is checking. So if the laser's Y position is going to be greater than or equal to 0. So if the player's laser is going to be on the screen, if I go back here, so right here, I cannot hit. Okay, so if I slow down the laser a bit, probably that will probably help out a bit. If I go down here, this laser velocity is how fast the laser is going to be moving across the screen. I'll put that to 3 for now. So if I go here, so as you can see, as I'm firing this bullet, the bullet right now, it's okay. Some reason decided not to work. So the bullet, as you can see, when it's going across the screen, the bullet is going to be there, so I can't really press spacebar and shoot another bullet until the bullet's been gone. So let me quickly change this back to 10, and then if I do this again, okay, now we can shoot the lasers. So when the lasers on the screen is actually moving, I won't be able to change it. I won't be able to shoot another bullet, because it's going to return. It's going to return here. It's going to return false. So that means I'm going to set laser state to false. So I won't be able to actually shoot the. You won't be able to press the spacebar to shoot the laser again until the laser's off the screen. Then if the laser is off the screen, I'm going to return true. And that will just change the laser state variable to true or false, which is going to decide whether or not this code right here is actually going to be run. So what's gonna the reason is I returned the values instead of changing it, because it wouldn't actually let me change the laser, or it did change the laser state, but it wasn't working until I did it like this. So I'm checking if it returns true or false, and then I will make the laser go onto the screen or off the screen depending on that. And then that's pretty much about it. So if I'm just checking if the latest instance does not exist, it's going to raise a local unbound error, which I explained. It means that I'm referring to a variable I didn't create yet. I'm just going to ignore that variable. I'm just going to ignore that error, not do anything, and then it's just going to run this code and run this while loop again and again and again. So it was a small update in this video, but hopefully I explained what's happening in the code thoroughly. In the next video, I'm going to be probably showing you guys once I've completed the game somewhat. So I've got the enemies working, and then I've got the score system working and levels. And then in the last video, I'll probably just show you guys how it looks like when I add a menu to the screen. And then that should probably just be it for the entire series. So thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, I'll leave a link in the description description below to the video before this, which is the first one. In the if there was a new video uploaded, I'll leave that in the description as well. And other than that, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.